The cold November wind cut through Boston's streets like a sharp blade, making the dry leaves dance in whirlwinds around the streetlights that were beginning to flicker on in the late afternoon. Isabella Rodriguez adjusted her scarf around her neck as she hurried down Beacon Street, her boots making a rhythmic sound against the pavement wet from the rain that had fallen earlier. At 26, Isabella was a dedicated nurse who had worked at Massachusetts General Hospital for 3 years. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a practical bun, some rebellious strands escaping and framing her face with delicate but determined features. Her honey-colored eyes reflected a mixture of fatigue and concern as she checked the address on the crumpled paper in her hand for the 10th time. Number 847 Beacon Street, she murmured to herself, stopping in front of an imposing wrought iron gate that guarded a 3-story Victorian mansion. The property stood out from the other elegant houses in the Back Bay neighborhood, not only for its impressive size, but for the somber aura that seemed to emanate from its dark windows and the ivy that partially covered its red brick walls. Isabella hesitated, remembering the words of her supervisor, Margaret O'Brien, earlier that day. The woman in her 50s, with graying hair always impeccably styled and a stern expression that intimidated even the most experienced doctors, had called Isabella into her office right after the morning shift. "Isabella, I need you to accept a special case," Margaret had said, her fingers drumming nervously on the dark wooden desk. "It's a private job, very well paid. The patient is a 42-year-old man who suffered serious injuries in an accident. He needs intensive home care." Isabella had frowned, intrigued. "What kind of accident? Why isn't he in the hospital?" Margaret had looked away, focusing on some papers on her desk. "Let's say he prefers privacy. The payment is 3 times your normal salary, Isabella. I know you have nursing school debts and that you're helping your mother with her medical expenses." It was true. Carmen Rodriguez, her mother, had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes the previous year, and the costs of medications and medical consultations were consuming most of Isabella's salary. The young nurse worked extra shifts whenever possible, but still barely managed to pay all the bills. "Where is the job?" Isabella had asked, already sensing she would accept the proposal. "Beacon Street, 847. It's a mansion in Back Bay." Margaret had paused, her eyes finally meeting Isabella's. "But I need to warn you about something important. That house has a reputation. People in the neighborhood avoid passing by there, especially at night. There have been rumors over the years about what happens inside." "What kind of rumors?" Isabella had asked, feeling a chill run down her spine. "Nothing confirmed, of course," Margaret had responded quickly. "But they say the owner is involved in questionable business. The police have been there a few times but never found anything. Officially, he's a successful businessman in the import and export trade." Isabella had swallowed hard. "Are you asking me to take care of a criminal?" "I'm asking you to take care of a patient," Margaret had corrected firmly. "Whatever he does for a living, now he needs medical care, and you need the money." "But Isabella," her voice had become softer, almost maternal, "if you accept, be very careful. Do your job, don't ask unnecessary questions, and get out of there as soon as the treatment is finished." Now, standing in front of the imposing gate, Isabella felt the weight of those words. The wind had intensified, making the branches of the old trees that lined the property sway almost hypnotically. The mansion seemed to watch her through its dark windows, like eyes that studied and evaluated her. She checked the watch on her wrist. 6:45 p.m. She was 15 minutes late due to Boston's heavy end-of-day traffic. Taking a deep breath, Isabella pressed the intercom button beside the gate. The sound echoed for a few seconds before a male voice, deep and with a slight accent she couldn't identify, responded. "Yes? Good evening. I'm Isabella Rodriguez, the nurse. I'm here to care for the patient." There was a long pause followed by the metallic sound of the gate opening automatically. Isabella walked along the stone path that led to the main entrance, noticing how the garden, despite being well maintained, had a somber aspect. The rose bushes were pruned for winter, their bare branches extending like skeletal fingers, and the marble statues scattered across the lawn seemed to watch her with melancholic expressions. The main door was made of solid wood, with carved details that spoke of the wealth and good taste of whoever had ordered the house built decades ago. Before Isabella could knock, the door opened, revealing a tall, thin man of approximately 60 years, wearing an impeccable dark suit. His graying hair was combed back, and his pale blue eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel uncomfortable. "Miss Rodriguez," he said with a formal and controlled voice. "I'm Thomas Blackwood, the house butler. Mr. Castellano is expecting you." Isabella nodded, following Thomas through an impressive entrance hall. The ceiling was high, decorated with elaborate frescoes, and a marble staircase curved elegantly toward the second floor. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting dancing shadows on the dark wood-paneled walls. Despite the obvious beauty of the decoration, there was something oppressive about the environment, as if the house itself kept dark secrets. "Mr. Castellano is in the study," Thomas explained as they walked down a long corridor, their footsteps muffled by the Persian rug covering the wooden floor. "He suffered serious injuries 3 days ago and has been refusing to go to the hospital. His condition is stable, but he needs constant care." "What kind of injuries?" Isabella asked, her voice echoing slightly in the silent corridor. Thomas stopped in front of a dark wooden door with bronze details. "Gunshot wounds," he replied simply, as if he were talking about the weather. "2 shots, one in the left shoulder and another in the right thigh. The bullets were removed by a private doctor, but recovery will be long." Isabella felt her stomach contract. Gunshot wounds. This confirmed her suspicions about the questionable nature of the property owner's business. She thought of her mother, the medical bills that were accumulating, the small and poorly heated apartment where they lived in the Dorchester neighborhood. 3 times her normal salary. It would be enough to pay off the debts and still have some left over for the next months of Carmen's treatment. Thomas knocked lightly on the door and waited for a response before opening it. "Mr. Castellano, the nurse has arrived." Isabella entered the study and immediately felt intimidated by the presence of the man sitting behind a solid mahogany desk. Even injured and obviously in pain, Dante Castellano radiated a natural authority that made the air around him seem denser. His black hair had gray strands at the temples, and his dark eyes studied her with an intensity that made her feel as if he could read her most intimate thoughts. He was wearing a white silk shirt, partially open, revealing bandages on his left shoulder. His skin had a slightly grayish tone that indicated blood loss, but his posture remained erect and proud. There was something magnetic about his presence, a mixture of danger and charm that Isabella found disturbing. "Miss Rodriguez," Dante said, his deep voice carrying a slight Italian accent. "Thomas told me you're one of the best nurses at Massachusetts General." Isabella forced herself to maintain eye contact, despite the nervousness she felt. "I do my best, Mr. Castellano. I'd like to examine your wounds to assess your current condition." Dante smiled, an expression that didn't reach his eyes. "Straight to the point. I like that." He gestured to a chair in front of his desk. "But first, sit down. We need to establish some rules." Isabella hesitated but sat in the indicated chair. The leather was soft and expensive, and she felt small in the imposing furniture of the study. The walls were covered with shelves full of leather-bound books, and several oil paintings portrayed scenes of Italian landscapes. "First rule," Dante began, his fingers drumming slowly on the desk. "What you see and hear in this house doesn't leave here. Never. This includes conversations, visitors, phone calls, anything. Do you understand?" Isabella nodded, feeling her mouth dry. "I understand." "Second rule, you don't ask questions about my business or about how I got injured. Your job is to take care of my recovery, nothing more." "Of course," Isabella replied, her voice coming out weaker than she would have liked. "Third rule," Dante continued, leaning slightly forward, "you don't leave this house without my permission. During the period of your treatment, you'll stay here. Thomas has prepared a room for you on the second floor." Isabella felt a chill of alarm. "Excuse me, but this wasn't mentioned when I accepted the job. I need to go home every night. My mother—" "Your mother is being well cared for," Dante interrupted calmly. "I took the liberty of arranging a private nurse for her during your absence. Carmen Rodriguez, 54 years old, diabetic, living at 342 Dorchester Avenue, apartment 2B. Isabella's blood ran cold. How did he know where her mother lived? How did he know about her medical condition? How do you... I always research the people who work for me, Dante said, his voice maintaining the same calm and controlled tone. Your mother is safe, Miss Rodriguez. In fact, she's safer now than she's been in the last few months. The nurse I sent is highly qualified and has instructions to ensure Carmen receives the best possible care. Isabella stood up abruptly, her heart beating rapidly. This is kidnapping. You can't force me to stay here. Dante also stood up, moving with feline grace despite his injuries. He walked around the desk and stopped a few steps from her, his physical presence intimidating. Miss Rodriguez, you're here by your own choice. You accepted a well-paid job to care for a patient. The fact that this job requires your constant presence was information that reached you a little late, I admit. I want to leave, Isabella said, trying to keep her voice steady. Now. Dante studied her for a long moment, his dark eyes seeming to penetrate her soul. You can leave, of course, but if you do, the deal is cancelled. Your mother will lose the medical care I provided, and you'll return to your life of debts and worries. Besides, he paused, letting the silence stretch. It would be a shame if something happened to Carmen while you weren't there to protect her. The veiled threat hit Isabella like a punch to the stomach. She understood perfectly what he was saying. Her mother was being used as collateral for her cooperation. You're a monster, she whispered. I'm a businessman, Dante corrected. And you, Miss Rodriguez, have just become part of one of my most important businesses. Now how about we examine those wounds? I'm starting to feel pain, and I believe that's what you're here for. Isabella closed her eyes for a moment, fighting against the tears of anger and fear that threatened to overflow. When she opened them again, Dante was still there, watching her with that impassive expression that made her feel like an insect under a microscope. Very well, she said finally, her voice trembling slightly. But I want to talk to my mother. I want to make sure she's okay. Dante smiled again, this time with an expression that could almost be considered gentle. Of course. Thomas will provide a phone for you after the examination. Now let's take care of these wounds before I faint, and you have to explain to my men why you let their boss die. As Isabella opened her medical bag with trembling hands, she couldn't help but think of Margaret's words. Be very careful. Do your job, don't ask unnecessary questions, and get out of there as soon as the treatment is finished. But now she realized that getting out of there wouldn't be as simple as she had imagined. Dante Castellano wasn't just a patient. He was a predator who had chosen her as his prey. And as she began to examine his wounds, Isabella wondered if she would ever be able to escape the web he had woven around her. The wind continued to howl outside, making the study windows vibrate slightly. In the golden light of the lamps, the shadows seemed to dance on the walls, creating shapes that reminded Isabella that she had entered a world where normal rules didn't apply, a world where a powerful man could do whatever he wanted, and where a young nurse could become a prisoner of her own circumstances. As her hands worked automatically, checking the bandages and assessing the healing of the wounds, Isabella's mind raced in search of an escape. But for now, all she could do was care for the man who had become her captor, hoping that an opportunity for escape would arise before it was too late. Morning came to Boston, wrapped in a dense fog that transformed the city into a ghostly scene. Isabella woke up in a room that seemed straight out of a decorating magazine. Wallpaper in cream and gold tones, antique dark polished wood furniture, and a canopy bed that probably cost more than she earned in 6 months. Despite the luxury around her, she had slept poorly, waking up several times during the night with nightmares about her mother in danger. The clock on the nightstand read 6:30 a.m. Isabella got up and walked to the window, pulling back the silk curtains to observe the frost-covered garden. From there on the second floor, she could see beyond the property walls, where ordinary people of Boston were beginning their normal days, walking their dogs, running to catch the bus, living their free lives. The irony wasn't lost on her. A soft knock on the door interrupted her melancholic thoughts. "Come in," she said, adjusting the robe she had found in the closet the night before. Thomas entered carrying a silver tray with coffee, fresh croissants, and fruit. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez. Mr. Castellano requested that you have breakfast before examining him again." "How is he feeling?" Isabella asked, accepting the cup of coffee Thomas offered her. The rich, full-bodied aroma made her realize how hungry she was. "He had a difficult night," Thomas replied, his expression remaining neutral. "The fever rose during the early morning, and he was restless. I believe the infection may be spreading." Isabella felt a knot in her stomach. Infections in gunshot wounds could be fatal if not properly treated. "Why didn't you call me?" "Mr. Castellano forbade us from disturbing you. He said you needed to rest to be in full condition today." She took a sip of coffee, feeling the caffeine begin to awaken her senses. "I need to examine him immediately, and I'll need some medical supplies that I didn't bring yesterday." "They've already been provided," Thomas said, indicating a table in the corner of the room where Isabella noticed several boxes and medical equipment that definitely weren't there the night before. "Mr. Castellano has considerable resources." Isabella approached the table and examined the supplies. There were state-of-the-art antibiotics, monitoring equipment, even a small portable ultrasound device. Everything was top quality, probably obtained through channels she preferred not to question. "Tell Mr. Castellano I'll be there in 15 minutes, she said, already mentally planning the examination she needed to perform. Thomas nodded and withdrew silently. Isabella took a quick shower in the luxurious bathroom attached to the room, put on her clothes from the previous day, and gathered the medical supplies she would need. As she organized the instruments, she couldn't stop thinking about the phone conversation she had with her mother the night before. Carmen had sounded well, even cheerful. The nurse Dante had sent, a woman named Elena Vasquez, apparently was not only competent, but also pleasant company. She brought new medications, Mica, Carmen had said in Spanish, using Isabella's childhood nickname. Expensive medications that insurance would never cover, and she cooks better than you. The last observation had drawn a laugh from Isabella, despite her situation. But beneath the relief of knowing her mother was well cared for, there was the bitter realization that Dante had calculated perfectly how to keep her cooperative. He hadn't just threatened her mother, he had made Carmen's life better, creating a dependency that would be difficult to break. Isabella went down the main stairs, noticing details of the decoration she had missed the night before due to nervousness. The house was truly magnificent, each piece of furniture and each work of art speaking of generations of wealth and good taste. But there was also a coldness in the environment, as if the house were more a museum than a home. She found Dante in the same study from the night before, but now he was reclining on a leather sofa near the fireplace. Even from a distance, Isabella could see he was worse. His skin had a sickly pallor, and there was a tension in his shoulders that indicated significant pain. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez," he said when she entered, trying to maintain a casual tone. But Isabella noticed the hoarseness in his voice. "Mr. Castellano, I need to examine you immediately," she said, approaching with her medical bag. "Thomas told me you had a fever during the night." "Thomas talks too much," Dante murmured, but didn't protest when Isabella began checking his temperature with a digital thermometer. 102.6 degrees, she announced after a few seconds. "This is concerning. I need to examine the wounds." Dante nodded and began unbuttoning his shirt with careful movements. Isabella noticed how he tried to hide the pain, but the small grimaces on his face betrayed him. When he removed his shirt, she could see that the shoulder bandages were stained with yellowish discharge. "This doesn't look good," she murmured, beginning to carefully remove the bandages. The wound was inflamed, with reddened edges and clear signs of infection. "How long has it been since you took antibiotics?" "I don't like medications," Dante replied, watching her work. "They make me vulnerable." Isabella stopped what she was doing and looked directly at him. "Mr. Castellano, you have a serious infection. If not properly treated, it can spread to the bloodstream and cause sepsis. This could kill you." "You won't let that happen," he said with a confidence Isabella found simultaneously irritating and touching. "I'm a nurse, not a magician," she replied, returning to clean the wound. "I need to administer intravenous antibiotics immediately, and you're going to have to trust me." Dante studied her for a long moment. Why should I trust you? You made it very clear last night that you consider me a monster. Isabella hesitated, her hands stopping momentarily. It was a fair question, and she was surprised to realize she didn't have a simple answer. Because, she said finally, regardless of what I think about you as a person, you're my patient, and I take that seriously. Even when the patient is keeping you here against your will. Especially then, Isabella replied, meeting his eyes. Because if I let you die, I'll never be able to live with myself. And because? She paused, surprised by her own honesty. Because despite everything, you took care of my mother. That counts for something. Dante smiled, and this time the expression seemed genuine. You're an interesting woman, Isabella Rodriguez. The use of her first name made her shiver slightly, but she forced herself to maintain professional focus. I'm going to prepare the antibiotic. This will hurt a little. As she prepared the intravenous medication, Dante watched her work. There was something hypnotic about the way her hands moved with precision and confidence, transforming the chaos of medical supplies into order and purpose. Can I ask a question? He said when she was inserting the needle into his vein. You can ask. I don't guarantee I'll answer. Why did you become a nurse? Isabella considered the question while adjusting the drip rate. My father died when I was 16, she said finally. Heart attack. My mother and I got to the hospital, but he was already gone. The nurses were kind to us. They helped us understand what had happened, gave us time to say goodbye, took care of us when we were destroyed. I wanted to be able to do that for other people. And your mother? How did she cope with the loss? Isabella looked at him with surprise. The question was unexpectedly personal, and there was something in his voice that suggested genuine interest, not just casual curiosity. It was difficult, she admitted. Dad was everything to her. They met when she was only 18, newly arrived from El Salvador. He helped her learn English, adapt to life here. When he died, it was as if a part of her had died too. That's why you take such good care of her. That's why I take such good care of her, Isabella confirmed. She sacrificed a lot for me, worked 3 jobs to keep me in school, never remarried because she said I was her priority. Now it's my turn to take care of her. Dante was silent for a moment, watching the clear liquid of the antibiotic drip slowly through the tube. My mother died when I was 12, he said finally. Cancer. My father wasn't a gentle man. After she was gone, he became even worse. Isabella felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. I'm sorry. She used to tell me that no matter what the world did to me, I could always choose what kind of man I wanted to be. Dante laughed bitterly. I think I disappointed her. Maybe it's not too late to change, Isabella said softly. Dante looked at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Do you really believe that? That people can change? I have to believe it, she replied. Otherwise, what would be the point of anything? Before Dante could respond, the study door opened abruptly. A tall, muscular man entered without ceremony, his dark eyes quickly scanning the environment before fixing on Isabella. He was about 35 years old, with short black hair and a scar that ran from his left ear to the corner of his mouth. His clothes were expensive but practical, and Isabella noticed the suspicious bulge under his jacket that was probably a weapon. Dante, we need to talk, the man said, his accent carrying traces of Brooklyn. Now, Marco, Dante said, his voice immediately assuming a colder and more authoritative tone. You can see I'm busy. Marco looked at Isabella with an expression that mixed distrust and something she couldn't identify. Who is she? My nurse, Dante replied simply. Since when do you need a nurse? Marco approached, studying Isabella as if she were a potential threat. And since when do we let strangers into the house? Since I took 2 bullets and you and your men couldn't protect me adequately, Dante replied, his voice loaded with an authority that made Marco step back slightly. Isabella felt the tension in the air intensify. It was obvious that Marco wasn't just an employee. There was a familiarity between the 2 men that suggested a long history, probably not entirely friendly. The Torinos are moving, Marco said, ignoring Dante's provocation. Our contacts in the police say they're planning something big, and with you injured, With him injured, he needs medical care, Isabella interrupted, surprising herself with her courage. And I need silence to work. Marco stared at her with an expression of shock, as if he couldn't believe she had dared to speak. Who do you think you are to... Marco. Dante's voice cut through the air like a blade. Miss Rodriguez is right. You can wait outside until I'm finished here. For a moment, Isabella thought Marco would argue. His fists clenched, and she saw a muscle in his jaw contract. But then he nodded brusquely. 5 minutes, he said, heading for the door. Then we need to talk about security. When the door closed behind him, Isabella realized she had been holding her breath. Friend of yours? She asked, trying to keep her tone casual. Marco Benedetti, Dante said. My security advisor. He's been with me for 15 years. He doesn't like me. Marco doesn't like anyone he can't control, Dante explained. And you, Miss Rodriguez, are definitely uncontrollable. Isabella didn't know if this was a compliment or criticism, but decided to accept it as the former. The antibiotic will take about an hour to be completely administered, she said, checking the drip. After that, I need to change the bandages on the wound in your thigh. And then you're going to rest whether you want to or not. Your body needs energy to fight the infection. Dante smiled. You're very bossy for someone who's technically my prisoner. And you're very obedient for someone who's supposedly a mafia boss, Isabella replied before realizing what she had said. The silence that followed was tense. Dante studied her with an unreadable expression, and Isabella wondered if she had gone too far. Supposedly? He said finally. Isabella swallowed hard. I didn't mean to. Don't worry, Dante said, his voice returning to a casual tone. You didn't say anything that half of Boston doesn't already suspect. The difference is that now you're here, seeing for yourself what kind of man I really am. And what kind of man are you? Isabella asked, surprised by her own courage. Dante looked at her for a long moment. That, he said finally, is something you'll have to discover for yourself. Outside, Isabella could hear Marco pacing impatiently in the corridor. The wind had intensified, making the windows vibrate, and she wondered if a storm was approaching. In a way, she felt she was already in the middle of one, a storm of circumstances that had transformed her orderly life into something completely unpredictable. As she watched the antibiotics slowly drip into Dante's vein, Isabella wondered how she had reached this point. 24 hours ago, her biggest concern was paying her mother's medical bills. Now she was caring for a man who could be one of Boston's most dangerous criminals, in a mansion that seemed straight out of a movie, while armed men discussed security outside. But there was something more disturbing than the situation itself. She was beginning to see Dante Castellano not just as her captor, but as a complex and contradictory human being. And that, she knew, was dangerous in a completely different way. 3 days had passed since Isabella's arrival at the mansion, and the routine that had been established was strangely domestic for someone who considered herself a prisoner. She woke up early, had breakfast in the luxurious room that had temporarily become hers, and then spent most of the day caring for Dante, whose wounds were finally beginning to show signs of improvement. The infection had yielded to antibiotics, and his fever had dropped significantly. But Isabella noticed that as Dante recovered physically, he became more restless, more prone to questioning her medical orders, and more interested in resuming his normal activities, whatever that meant. It was a rainy December afternoon when Isabella went down to the study for the midday dressing session and found Dante on the phone, speaking in Italian with an intensity that made the hair on the back of her neck stand up. His voice was low but loaded with authority, and although she didn't understand the words, the tone was unmistakably threatening. He gestured for her to enter and continued the conversation for a few more minutes before hanging up. Sorry, he said, returning to English. Urgent business. Problems? Isabella asked, beginning to organize her medical supplies on the side table. Nothing you need to worry about, Dante replied, but she noticed the tension in his shoulders. How am I today, doctor? Isabella smiled despite herself. Nurse, she corrected. And you're much better. The inflammation has decreased considerably, and there are no more signs of infection. Great. Does that mean I can go back to work? That means you can start moving more, but you still need at least a week of rest before resuming normal activities. Isabella began removing the bandages from Dante's shoulder, and definitely nothing that could result in more gunshot wounds. Dante laughed, a genuine sound that completely transformed his expression. I'll try to avoid that. As Isabella worked, she became aware of how accustomed she had become to the physical proximity necessary to care for him. In the first days, touching Dante had been purely professional, but now she noticed details she shouldn't. The texture of his skin, the subtle scent of his aftershave, the way his muscles contracted slightly when she touched a sensitive area. "Can I ask a question?" Dante said, interrupting her thoughts. "You always can," Isabella replied, concentrating on applying the new dressing. "Why haven't you tried to escape?" The question caught her by surprise. "What do you mean?" "You've had opportunities. Thomas goes out shopping, Marco and the other men aren't always here. You could have tried to leave." Isabella stopped what she was doing and looked at him. "Do you want me to try to escape?" "I want to understand why you haven't tried." Isabella considered the question carefully. It was something she had asked herself. "Several reasons," she said finally. "First, you made it clear that my mother is being monitored. Second, you still need medical care. And third," she hesitated. Third, I'm not sure I really want to escape." The silence that followed was charged with tension. Dante studied her with those penetrating dark eyes, and Isabella felt as if he could see directly into her soul. "That's dangerous," he said finally. "What?" "Starting to like me." Isabella felt her face heat up. "I didn't say I like you. You didn't need to say it." Before Isabella could respond, the study door opened and Marco entered, followed by two men she hadn't seen before. One was short and stocky, with graying hair and small, calculating eyes. The other was younger, tall and thin, with a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. "Dante, we need to talk," Marco said, his eyes moving quickly between Isabella and his boss. "Now." "Miss Rodriguez hasn't finished yet," Dante replied calmly. "I have finished," Isabella said quickly, sensing the tension in the air. "I just need to apply the antibiotic ointment and—" "That can wait," Marco interrupted. "Leave." Isabella looked at Dante, who nodded almost imperceptibly. "I'll finish later," she said, beginning to pack her supplies. "Isabella," Dante said when she was almost at the door, "don't go too far. We still need to take care of the thigh wound." She nodded and left, but couldn't help noticing how Marco watched her leave, his expression clearly suspicious. Isabella went up to her room, but curiosity consumed her. She had noticed that the tension in the house had increased in recent days, with more men coming and going, whispered conversations being interrupted when she appeared, and a general air of expectation that made her nervous. After about an hour, she decided to go down to see if Dante was ready to finish the treatment. But when she approached the study, loud voices made her stop in the corridor. "We can't trust her." Marco's voice was clear through the partially open door. "She sees too much, hears too much. She's a security risk." "Isabella isn't a problem," Dante replied, his voice controlled but with an edge of irritation. "Not a problem?" The voice of the shorter man was rough, loaded with a Brooklyn accent. "Dante, she's a civilian. If the feds get her—" "The feds won't get her because she doesn't know anything," Dante interrupted. "She knows you were shot," Marco said. "She knows about the house, about us. That's already too much." Isabella felt her stomach contract. They were talking about her as if she were a problem to be solved, and she had a very clear idea of how men like these solved problems. "Besides," Marco continued, "you're getting attached to her. That's dangerous, Dante. You can't afford to have weak points now, not with the Torinos moving." "My personal feelings are none of your business," Dante said, his voice taking on an icy tone that Isabella had learned to recognize as dangerous. "They are when they affect the family's security," Marco replied. "And this girl is affecting your judgment. Careful, Marco." The threat in Dante's voice was unmistakable. "You're treading on dangerous ground." Isabella knew she should walk away, return to her room and pretend she hadn't heard anything. But her feet seemed glued to the floor, and she continued listening to the conversation that could determine her fate. "Look, Dante," said a third voice. Probably the younger man. Marco's right about one thing. The situation with the Torinos is heating up. They attacked 2 of our businesses last week, and our contacts in the police say they're planning something big. You need to be focused. I am focused, Dante said. And part of my focus includes ensuring Isabella is safe. Why? Marco's question sounded almost desperate. Why is she important? She's just a nurse. The silence that followed was long and tense. Isabella held her breath, waiting for Dante's answer. Because, he said finally, his voice softer than before, she reminds me of who I used to be, or who I could have been. Isabella felt something tighten in her chest. There was a vulnerability in Dante's voice that she had never heard before, an admission of something he had probably never said aloud. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Marco said, frustration clear in his voice. You're romanticizing the situation. She's a complication we can't afford to have. So what do you suggest? Dante's voice had returned to its cold and controlled tone. Isabella didn't hear Marco's response, but the silence that followed was more terrifying than any words could have been. She moved away from the door silently and went upstairs as quickly as she could without making noise. Back in her room, Isabella sat on the bed, trying to process what she had heard. Dante had admitted to having feelings for her, but that only put her in more danger. Marco clearly saw her as a threat, and she had no illusions about what men like him did with threats. She thought of her mother, probably at that moment having tea with Elena and wondering when her daughter would come home. Carmen had no idea of the danger Isabella was in, and maybe it was better that way. A soft knock on the door interrupted her dark thoughts. "Come in," she said, expecting to see Thomas with lunch. Instead, Dante entered, closing the door behind him. He had put on a clean shirt, and Isabella noticed he was moving more easily, although he still favored his injured shoulder. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. Isabella considered denying it, but something in his expression made her realize it would be useless. "I heard." Dante approached and sat in the armchair near the window, studying her carefully. "And what did you think of what you heard?" "That I'm in danger," Isabella replied honestly. "That Marco wants to get rid of me, and that you're trying to protect me for reasons I don't completely understand." "The reasons are simple," Dante said. "You saved my life, and..." He hesitated as if struggling with the words. "And you make me want to be a better man." Isabella felt her heart accelerate. "Dante, I know it's complicated," he continued. "I know you shouldn't be here, that I shouldn't have done this to you. But now that you're here..." He stood up and approached her. "I can't let anything happen to you." "And if I wanted to leave?" Isabella asked, though she wasn't sure if she really wanted to. "Do you want to?" Isabella looked at him, really looked at him. She saw the small scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes softened when he looked at her, the tension in his shoulders that spoke of years carrying responsibilities she could barely imagine. She saw a man who had made terrible choices but who still had the capacity for kindness, for protection, for something that could be love. "I don't know," she said honestly. Dante moved closer, stopping just inches from her. "Isabella, I need you to understand something. The world I live in is dangerous. There are people who want to see me dead, and now by association they might want to hurt you too. The Torinos," Dante nodded, "among others. Marco is right about one thing. Your presence here complicates things, but..." He reached out and gently touched her face. "Some complications are worth it." Isabella involuntarily leaned into his touch, feeling an electric current run through her skin. "What's going to happen to me?" "I'll protect you," Dante said with a conviction that made her believe him. "No matter what happens, I won't let anyone hurt you." "And my mother?" "She's also protected. Elena has orders to take her to a safe place if necessary." Isabella closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the situation. When she opened them again, Dante was still there, watching her with an intensity that made her feel as if she were the only person in the world. "Dante," she said softly, "what do you really do? I mean, I know you're involved in illegal activities, but what exactly?" Dante stepped back slightly, and Isabella saw the internal struggle in his eyes. "Are you sure you want to know? Because once I tell you, there's no going back." Isabella nodded. "I need to know." Dante took a deep breath. "My family controls most of the import and export operations at the Boston port. Officially, we're legitimate businessmen. Unofficially, he paused, we facilitate the movement of goods that others prefer to keep away from government eyes. Drugs, among other things. We also offer protection to businesses that need our services. And occasionally we resolve disputes that the legal system can't or won't resolve. Isabella processed the information. It was what she had suspected, but hearing it confirmed was different. And the Torinos, a rival family from New York that wants to expand to Boston. They think that with my father dead for 2 years, we're vulnerable. Dante smiled, but there was no humor in the expression. They're wrong. Is that why you were shot? Probably. Although we're still not sure who pulled the trigger. Isabella got up and walked to the window, observing the snow-covered garden that had begun to fall during the afternoon. So you really are a mafia boss. I prefer businessman with diverse interests, Dante said, and Isabella could hear the smile in his voice. She turned to face him. How did you get into this? You said your mother wanted you to be a better man. Dante's expression darkened. After she died, my father brought me into the family business. I was 12 and angry at the whole world. Violence seemed appropriate, and when you grow up in this world, it's hard to imagine any other. But you can imagine it now. Dante looked at her for a long moment. Since you arrived here, yes. For the first time in years, I can imagine a different life. Isabella felt tears sting her eyes. Dante. Before she could finish the sentence, the sound of screeching tires outside made them turn to the window. 3 black cars had stopped in front of the gate, and armed men were getting out of them. Shit, Dante murmured, his expression instantly transforming. Isabella, I need you to go to the bathroom and lock the door. Now. What's happening? The Torinos found the house. Dante was already moving toward the door. Go, now! Isabella heard the sound of glass breaking downstairs, followed by shouts and what could only be gunshots. Her medical training kicked in, and she ran to the bathroom, locking the door behind her and crouching in the bathtub. Outside, she could hear Dante shouting orders, the sound of footsteps running through the corridors, and more gunshots. Her mind raced to her mother. Would Elena be able to keep her safe? And Dante, he was still recovering from serious injuries. Was he in any condition to fight? The sound of an explosion made the whole house shake, and Isabella curled up even more in the bathtub. She had entered this world out of necessity, but now she was in the middle of a war she didn't understand, protecting a man who had become much more important to her than he should have. As the sounds of battle continued outside, Isabella closed her eyes and prayed for her safety, for Dante's safety, and for a chance to survive whatever was happening. Because now she knew, with crystal clarity, that she no longer wanted to escape. She wanted to stay, fight alongside Dante, and discover if the love that was growing between them could survive the violent world he lived in. But first, they needed to survive the night. The silence that followed the gunshots was almost more terrifying than the shooting itself. Isabella remained huddled in the bathtub for another 10 minutes, counting every second that passed, before hearing a soft knock on the bathroom door. Isabella, it's me. Everything's okay now. Dante's voice was hoarse, tired, but it was definitely him. Isabella unlocked the door with trembling hands and opened it to find him leaning against the doorframe, a bloodstain spreading across his shirt where his stitches had torn. My God, you're bleeding, she exclaimed, immediately going into nurse mode. I'm fine, Dante said, but his pallor said otherwise. Just a few stitches that opened. Nothing serious. Isabella guided him back to the room and made him sit on the bed. Take off your shirt. I need to see the damage. As she examined the reopened wound, Isabella could feel the tension radiating from Dante's body. What happened downstairs? She asked, beginning to clean the blood. The Torinos tried a surprise attack, Dante replied, grimacing when Isabella touched a particularly sensitive area. 6 men. They didn't expect us to be prepared. Was anyone hurt? Marco took a bullet in the arm, but he'll be fine. We lost 1 man, Tony Ricci. He was 23. Dante's voice hardened. The Torinos will pay for this. Isabella stopped what she was doing. Dante, you can't go out looking for revenge. You're still recovering. and this will only escalate the violence. Isabella, you don't understand. Dante grabbed her wrists, his eyes burning with an intensity that made her shiver. They came to my house. They threatened you. This can't go unanswered. And if you die trying to get revenge, what happens to me then? What happens to your family, your business? Dante studied her for a long moment, and Isabella saw the internal struggle in his eyes. You're right, he said finally. But I can't just ignore this. If I appear weak— You don't appear weak, Isabella interrupted. You appear smart. There are other ways to deal with this that don't involve you putting yourself in unnecessary danger. Before Dante could respond, Marco appeared at the door, his left arm in an improvised sling. His expression was grim, and Isabella noticed he avoided looking directly at her. Dante, we need to talk, he said, about what happened today. You can speak in front of Isabella, Dante said, surprising Isabella. Marco hesitated. Are you sure? I'm sure. Marco took a deep breath. We have a problem. The Torinos knew exactly where to attack, when to attack, how many men we had here. They had detailed information about our security. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. Are you saying there's a traitor? It's the only explanation, Marco confirmed. Someone close is passing information to the Torinos. Dante stood up abruptly, ignoring Isabella's protest about his stitches. Who had access to information about the house's security? Me, you, Thomas, and the 5 men on the internal security team, Marco replied. No one else knew the details. Thomas has been with us for 20 years, Dante said, beginning to pace back and forth. He was loyal to my father before me. People change, Marco said, especially when there's money involved. Isabella watched the conversation, feeling like an intruder but unable to walk away. There was something fascinating and terrifying about seeing how these men dealt with betrayal and violence as if they were common business problems. I need to speak with each of them, Dante said. Individually. I've already started, Marco said. But Dante, there's another possibility we need to consider. What? Marco looked significantly at Isabella. She arrived here 3 days before the attack. She has access to the house. Here's our conversations. Stop right there, Dante said, his voice taking on a dangerous tone. I'm just saying we need to consider all possibilities, Marco continued. She could be working for the Torinos or for the feds. Isabella saved my life, Dante interrupted. She's had several opportunities to kill me if she wanted to. Maybe her mission wasn't to kill you, Marco suggested. Maybe it was to gain your trust, collect information. Isabella felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Do you really believe that? She asked, looking at Dante. Dante studied her for a long moment, and Isabella saw doubt in his eyes. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. No, he said finally. I don't believe it. Dante, you need to be rational about this, Marco insisted. Your life could depend on it. My life has already depended on her, Dante replied. And she saved me. Isabella stood up abruptly. You two can discuss this without me, she said, heading for the door. But for the record, if I were a spy, I'd be a very bad one, because I'm in love with the target. The silence that followed her declaration was deafening. Isabella realized what she had said only after the words left her mouth, but it was too late to take them back. And she realized she didn't want to take them back. Isabella? Dante said softly. No, she said, stopping at the door but not turning around. Don't say anything now. You have more important problems to solve. She left the room and went downstairs, needing fresh air and space to think. The house showed clear signs of the battle that had occurred. Broken windows, bullet marks on the walls, overturned furniture. But what impressed her most was seeing Thomas and 2 other men methodically cleaning up the mess, as if armed attacks were a regular occurrence. Isabella went out to the back garden, where snow continued to fall softly. The cold air burned her lungs, but she needed the clarity it brought. She had just admitted she was in love with a man she had known for only a few days, a man who was, by any definition, a criminal. But it was more complicated than that. Dante wasn't the monster she had imagined when she arrived there. He was a man who had inherited a legacy of violence, but who still had the capacity for kindness, for protection, for love. She had seen it in the way he talked about his mother. in the concern he showed for his men, in the way he treated her with respect, even when he could simply force her to do what he wanted. Heavy thoughts? Isabella turned to find Thomas approaching, carrying 2 cups of hot tea. He offered one to her, and she accepted gratefully. "Thank you," she said, wrapping her hands around the cup to warm herself. "How do you do it, Thomas?" "Do what, miss?" "Live in this world. The violence, the constant uncertainty, never knowing if today will be the last day." Thomas considered the question carefully. "When you love someone," he said finally, "you do whatever is necessary to protect them. Mr. Dante is like a son to me. I've watched him grow from an angry boy to the man he is today. He's not perfect, but he's a good man in a world that doesn't reward goodness." "Marco thinks I'm a spy," Isabella said. "Marco is paid to be paranoid," Thomas replied. "But I watch people, Miss Rodriguez. I watch how they behave when they think no one is looking. And you look at Mr. Dante the way my late wife used to look at me." Isabella felt tears sting her eyes. "This is crazy, isn't it? Falling in love with someone in a situation like this." "Love is rarely convenient," Thomas said with a gentle smile, "but it's always valuable." They remained silent for a few minutes, watching the snow fall. Isabella was beginning to feel calmer when she heard footsteps behind them. She turned to see Dante approaching, having put on a coat over his clean shirt. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. Thomas discreetly withdrew, leaving them alone in the silent garden. Dante approached Isabella, stopping a few steps from her. "About what you said upstairs," he began. "You don't need to say anything," Isabella interrupted. "I know it's complicated. I know it doesn't make sense." "Isabella." Dante moved closer, taking her hands in his. "I'm in love with you too." Isabella felt as if the world had stopped spinning. "Dante, I know it's crazy," he continued. "I know it shouldn't have happened, but it did, and now I need to figure out how to protect you in a world that wants to destroy us." "And if I didn't want to be protected?" Isabella asked. "And if I wanted to stay and fight by your side?" Dante studied her carefully. "Do you understand what that would mean? You wouldn't just be my nurse or even my lover. You'd be my partner, my equal. That would make you a target for all my enemies." "I'm already a target," Isabella pointed out. "At least this way, I can do something about it." Dante smiled, and this time, the expression reached his eyes. "You're extraordinary, Isabella Rodriguez. And you're impossible, Dante Castellano." He leaned in and kissed her, softly at first, then with more intensity. Isabella lost herself in the sensation, in his warmth against the cold of the night, in the implicit promise in the touch of his lips. When they separated, both were breathless. "So," Dante said, "what do we do now?" "Now," Isabella said, "we find out who's betraying you, stop the Torinos, and discover if love can survive in a world like yours." "Ours," Dante corrected. "Our world now." Isabella nodded, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. She had entered that house as a reluctant nurse, but was leaving as something completely different, the woman of a dangerous man, an active participant in a world she barely understood. But as she looked at Dante, seeing the love and determination in his eyes, she knew she had made the right choice. It wouldn't be easy, and it certainly wouldn't be safe, but it would be real. And after years of taking care of other people, she had finally found someone who wanted to take care of her too. The snow continued to fall around them, covering the garden with a white blanket that made everything clean and new. It was a beginning, Isabella thought. A dangerous and uncertain beginning, but a beginning nonetheless. And as Dante led her back into the house, Isabella allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could build something beautiful together, even amidst the chaos and violence that surrounded them. But first, they had a traitor to find and a war to win. And Isabella was discovering she had more courage than she had ever imagined. A week had passed since the Torino attack, and the mansion had transformed into a fortress. Armed men patrolled the perimeter 24 hours a day. Security cameras were installed in every corner, and no one entered or left without Dante's personal approval. Isabella had grown accustomed to the constant sound of footsteps in the corridor and the murmur of communication radios. It was a cold December morning when everything changed. Isabella was in Dante's study, organizing his medications for the day, when Marco entered with an expression she had learned to fear, a mixture of anger and dark satisfaction. "We found our traitor," he announced without preamble. Dante, who was reviewing some documents at his desk, immediately looked up. "Who?" "Thomas." The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. Thomas, who had been so kind to her, who had spoken about love and loyalty in the snowy garden. "Impossible," Dante said, his voice low but loaded with disbelief. "Thomas has been with me for 20 years. He was like a father to me after mine died." Marco placed an envelope on the desk. "We found this in his room, $50,000 in cash, and a cell phone with messages from the Torinos." Dante picked up the phone and began scrolling through the messages, his expression becoming darker with each second. Isabella approached and read over his shoulder, feeling her stomach turn with each line. The messages were clear and detailed. Patrol schedules, number of guards, house layout, even information about Isabella's medical routine with Dante. Everything was there, meticulously documented and transmitted to a number that Marco had traced to Vincent Torino, the head of the rival family. "Where is he now?" Dante asked, his voice dangerously calm. "In the kitchen, preparing breakfast. He doesn't know we've discovered." Dante stood up slowly, and Isabella saw something die in his eyes. An innocence, perhaps, or a faith in human goodness that he had managed to maintain despite everything. "Dante," Isabella said softly, touching his arm. "Let me talk to him first." "Why?" Marco asked, his voice loaded with distrust. "So he can make up an excuse?" "To understand why," Isabella replied. "Thomas isn't a bad man. There must be a reason." Dante studied her for a long moment. "5 minutes," he said finally. "Then I deal with this my way." Isabella nodded and left the study, her heart beating rapidly. She found Thomas in the kitchen, as Marco had said, preparing coffee and organizing a tray with fresh croissants. He smiled when he saw her, the same warm and paternal expression she had come to associate with safety. "Good morning, Miss Rodriguez. How is Mr. Dante feeling today?" "Thomas," Isabella said, closing the kitchen door behind her. "We need to talk." Something in her voice must have alerted him, because his expression changed immediately. "About what?" "About the $50,000 in your room. About the messages to Vincent Torino. About how you betrayed the family you've served for 20 years. Thomas closed his eyes and leaned against the counter, seeming to age 10 years in seconds. "How did you find out?" "Does it matter?" Isabella approached him. "Thomas, why? Dante trusts you. He loves you like a father, and I love him like a son," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "That's why I did what I did." Isabella frowned. "I don't understand." Thomas turned to face her, and she saw tears in his eyes. "My granddaughter Emily, she's 8 years old. The Torinos kidnapped her 3 weeks ago." Isabella felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. "What?" "They said they would kill her if I didn't cooperate. $50,000 and my granddaughter's life in exchange for information about the house's security." Thomas wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "What would you do, Miss Rodriguez, if it were your daughter?" Isabella sat heavily in a chair, trying to process the information. "Why didn't you tell Dante? He would have helped. They said if I told anyone, Emily would die immediately. And I couldn't risk it." Thomas sat across from her. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I betrayed the family, but she's all I have left in the world." "Where is she?" "I don't know. They call me from different numbers, send me photos of her to prove she's alive, but they never told me where they're keeping her." Isabella heard footsteps approaching and knew time was up. The door opened and Dante entered, followed by Marco and 2 other men. Dante's expression was cold as ice, but Isabella could see the pain beneath the anger. "Thomas," Dante said, his voice controlled. 20 years. 20 years of loyalty, of trust, of treating you like family. And you sell me to the Torinos for money." "It wasn't for the money," Thomas said, standing up slowly. "It was for Emily." "Who is Emily?" Marco asked. "My granddaughter," Thomas replied. "The Torinos kidnapped her. They said they would kill her if I didn't cooperate." Isabella saw Dante's expression change slightly, anger giving way to something more complex. Why didn't you tell me? Because they said they would kill her if I told anyone. And because, Thomas hesitated, because I knew you would do exactly what you're doing now. Declare war on the Torinos, and Emily would be the first casualty. So you preferred to betray me? I preferred to save an innocent child, Thomas replied, meeting Dante's eyes, even if it meant losing everything else. The silence in the kitchen was tense. Isabella could see the internal struggle in Dante, between anger at the betrayal and understanding of a grandfather's desperation. Show me the photos, Dante said finally. Thomas took out the cell phone and showed a series of photos of a small girl with blonde hair and blue eyes, clearly frightened but apparently unharmed. In each photo, there was a newspaper with the day's date, proving she was alive. The last one was yesterday, Thomas said. They said if the attack had been successful, they would release her. And now? Isabella asked. Now they want more information about the new security schemes, about retaliation plans. Thomas looked at Dante. I said I needed time. Marco approached. Dante, we can't trust him. Even if the story is true, he's already proven he'll betray us when pressured. The story is true, Isabella said firmly. Look at him. Do you think Thomas is faking this desperation? Dante studied Thomas for a long moment. How long has it been since you've seen Emily in person? 3 months, Thomas replied. Since my daughter died in a car accident. Emily came to live with me. And the Torinos knew this? They must have found out. They know everything about the people close to you. Dante began pacing back and forth, clearly thinking. Isabella could see the gears turning in his mind, calculating options and consequences. Marco, he said finally, I want you to trace all of Thomas's contacts in the last 3 months. Find out how the Torinos learned about Emily. Dante, Marco said, you can't be thinking of... I'm thinking of saving a child, Dante interrupted, and using this situation to end the Torinos once and for all. Isabella felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. What do you have in mind? Dante turned to Thomas. You're going to continue cooperating with them, but now you're going to pass along the information I want them to have. You want to use Thomas as a double agent? Marco asked, disbelief clear in his voice. I want to use the Torinos' greed against them, Dante replied. They think they have an advantage. We'll let them think that until it's too late. Thomas looked at Dante with an expression of cautious hope. Will you help save Emily? I'll do more than that, Dante said. I'll destroy the men who dared use a child as a weapon against my family. Isabella approached Dante. It's dangerous. If they discover Thomas is working for you, they won't discover it, Dante said, with a confidence she found simultaneously comforting and terrifying. Because we're going to give them exactly what they want, until the moment we don't. In the hours that followed, Isabella watched Dante orchestrate a complex plan involving false information, carefully calculated personnel movements, and what he called a lesson about the consequences of messing with innocent children. Thomas was instructed to pass information about a supposed business meeting Dante would have at a warehouse at the port the following night. In reality, it would be a trap, with Dante's men waiting for the Torinos. And Emily? Isabella asked when they were alone in the study later that night. We have people looking for her, Dante replied. The Torinos aren't as smart as they think. They left traces. Isabella approached him, placing her hands on his shoulders. Dante, promise me something. What? Promise me you won't put yourself in unnecessary danger tomorrow night. You're still recovering and I can't lose you now. Dante pulled her closer, wrapping her in his arms. You won't lose me, he said, kissing her forehead. I have too much to live for now, including a stubborn nurse who fell in love with you. Especially a stubborn nurse who fell in love with me. They kissed, and Isabella lost herself in the sensation of safety she felt in his arms. But beneath the passion, there was an undercurrent of fear. Fear of what tomorrow would bring. Fear that Dante's violent world would finally exact a price they couldn't pay. The next morning, Isabella woke to find Dante already dressed and ready to leave. He was wearing a dark suit and an expression she had learned to recognize, the cold and calculating mask of the Mafia boss. You don't have to do this. she said, sitting up in bed. I do, he replied, adjusting his tie. The Torinos crossed a line when they involved a child. This can't go unanswered. And after you destroy the Torinos, there will be another family, another enemy. When does this end? Dante approached the bed and sat beside her. Maybe it never ends completely, he said honestly, but I can make things safe enough for us to have a life together. What kind of life? Whatever kind you want, Dante said, taking her hands. We can leave Boston, start over somewhere else. Or we can stay and build something better here. The choice is yours. Isabella studied him carefully. And you? What do you want? I want you, he said simply. Everything else is negotiable. A few hours later, Isabella was in the study when Marco entered with news. We found Emily, he announced. She's being held in a house in Revere. 2 guards, minimal security. They're confident, Dante observed. They think Thomas has no choice but to cooperate. When are we going to get her? Isabella asked. Now, Dante replied, while the Torinos are preparing for the trap at the warehouse. The operation to rescue Emily was executed with military precision. Isabella insisted on going along, arguing that a traumatized child would need medical care and a comforting female presence. Dante initially resisted, but eventually agreed when she threatened to go alone if necessary. The house in Revere was a modest construction in a working-class neighborhood. Isabella waited in the car, while Dante's men silently neutralized the guards. 15 minutes later, Marco came out carrying a small girl wrapped in a blanket. Emily was frightened but physically unharmed. Isabella examined her carefully in the car, speaking softly to her in English and Spanish until the girl began to relax. Where is Grandpa Thomas? Emily asked in a small voice. He's waiting for you at home, Isabella replied. He was very worried. When they arrived at the mansion, the reunion between Thomas and Emily was emotional. The elderly man cried openly while hugging his granddaughter, and Isabella had to wipe away her own tears. Thank you, Thomas said to Dante, his voice choked. Thank you for giving me a second chance. Don't thank me yet, Dante replied. We still have the Torinos to deal with. That night, while Emily slept safely in the guest room and Thomas stood guard beside her bed, Dante and his men left for the warehouse. Isabella wanted to go along, but Dante was inflexible. Not this time, he said. This is going to be a war, not a rescue. I need to know you're safe. Isabella spent the next 3 hours pacing back and forth in the living room, checking the clock every few minutes. When she finally heard cars approaching, she ran to the window. Dante got out of the first car, apparently unharmed, followed by Marco and several other men. But Isabella noticed there were fewer men returning than had left. She ran to meet him at the door. Is everything okay? It's over, Dante said, pulling her into a tight embrace. The Torinos won't bother anyone anymore. And your men? We lost 2, Dante admitted, his voice heavy. But we saved Emily, protected our family, and sent a clear message to anyone who thinks of challenging us. Isabella stepped back to look into his eyes. Was it worth it? Dante considered the question carefully. Ask me that in a month, he said finally. When Emily is laughing again, when Thomas can sleep without nightmares, when you and I can plan a future without looking over our shoulders, then ask me if it was worth it. In the weeks that followed, life at the mansion gradually returned to something resembling normalcy. Emily adapted surprisingly well, bringing a young and cheerful energy to the somber house. Thomas returned to his duties with renewed loyalty and a gratitude that sometimes made Isabella uncomfortable. Dante, true to his word, began gradually withdrawing from the more violent aspects of his business, delegating more responsibilities to Marco and other trusted lieutenants. He and Isabella spent hours talking about the future, about the possibility of a different life. We can make this work, he said one night as they walked through the snow-covered garden. You and me, a real life together. Even with all your past, all the enemies you've made? The past is the past, Dante replied. What matters is what we build from now on. Isabella stopped and turned to face him. Then ask me. Ask you what? You know what. Dante smiled and knelt right there in the snow, pulling a small velvet box from his coat pocket. Isabella Rodriguez, he said. Will you marry me? and help me build a life my mother would be proud of. Isabella looked at the ring, a simple but perfect diamond in a classic setting, and then at the man who had transformed her life in ways she never could have imagined. "Yes," she said, extending her hand so he could place the ring, "but with one condition." "What?" "No honeymoon in places where people try to kill you." Dante laughed, a genuine and joyful sound that echoed through the silent garden. "I promise," he said, standing up and kissing her, although that considerably limits our options. As they walked back to the house, Isabella reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her there. She had entered that mansion as a reluctant nurse, forced by circumstances to care for a dangerous man. Now she was leaving as his fiancée, ready to build a life with him. It wouldn't be easy. There would always be shadows from Dante's past, always the possibility that someone would want to collect old debts. But Isabella had learned that true love wasn't about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone whose imperfections you could accept, whose demons you were willing to face alongside them. And as they entered the warm house, where Thomas was preparing hot chocolate and Emily was watching cartoons on television, Isabella knew she had found something worth all the risks she had taken to get there. She had found a family, a strange, complicated, and sometimes dangerous family, but a family nonetheless. And for the first time in years, Isabella Rodriguez felt truly at home. The future was uncertain, but they would face it together. And that, she knew, made all the difference.